Welcome everyone. Let's begin our lesson for today by going over our learning goals and success criteria. First, what are we learning? We're learning how to find the y-intercept of a linear equation given the slope and a point on the line. We're learning how to find the equation of a line given the slope and a point on a line, and how to manipulate the slope and y-intercept to change the steepness and location of a graph to suit the needs of the question. How are we learning it? Through the point-slope form notes and the point-slope form assignment, as well as the Linear Functions Marbleslides Activity assignment. When can we use this? To improve your ability to read between the lines and fill in gaps that are not given, such as putting together a bookcase with directions that are incomplete, and to complete a variety of tasks through trial and error rather than having to be formally taught the procedures. How do you know you learned it? By getting a score of 4 on the point-slope form assignment and a 4 on the Linear Functions Marbleslides Activity. Now, let's take a look at our agenda for today. We'll begin by going over our learning goals and success criteria. And while we do that, you'll fill out your Get It Started. Then once you're done with your Get It Started, we'll go over it together and answer any questions that you may have. Then we'll do our raffle for the day. After that, we'll go over the point slope form notes. And then I'll give you time to complete your point slope form assignment. Once you've completed your assignment, we'll go over it together and answer any questions that you may have. After that, we'll go over the Linear Functions Marbleslides Activity, which is on Desmos. I'll show you how to do it, and then you'll complete the rest of it for homework. At the end of class, we'll go over our learning goals and success criteria while you fill out your before you go. Your only homework is to work on the Linear Functions Marbleslides Activity and continue working on the linear equations and inequality study guide, and then any incomplete assignments that you may have. Let's take a look now at the Linear Functions Marbleslides Activity notes. We begin here with our learning goals and success criteria. Now let's talk about slope. What is slope? Slope is a rate of change involving x values and y values. Slope is known as for being the change in the dependent variable over the change in the independent variable. Now, what does that really mean? That really means that slope is the change in the y values over the change in the x values. So it's always y over x. And the next part you need to know is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is the point where the linear function crosses the y-axis. So we have a line here, and we can see that the y-axis goes here. So where do they intersect? Well, they intersect right there. That is what we call the y-intercept. So in this case, our y-intercept would be 2. Slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is written as y equals mx plus b. And what does that mean? M is the slope, and b is the y-intercept. Y and x are my variables that stay variables so that I can plug numbers in and see what they come out to be. So m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Now, how can I remember that? The easiest way I remember this is m represents the slope because it's a slippery slope to get hung up on your x. So think about it in terms of relationships. People that are involved in relationships and they break up, there's usually that one person in that relationship that's always hanging on to the relationship that's already dead. That's the slope. That's M. It's a slippery slope to get hung up on your X. They are not together anymore. But the M is always trying to hang on. Notice how close they are. So M is trying to hang on, and it's a slippery slope to get hung up on your X. Now B, on the other hand, is alone. Not attached to anybody. B is lonely. And lonely people ask the questions, why am I alone? Why does no one want me? Why does no one think I'm cute? That's B. B is always asking the why questions. Those are the y-intercept questions. So that's the way I remember it. It's a slippery slope to get hung up on your X. And why am I alone? So that's the way I remember slope and y-intercept. Now, let's go ahead and pick out the slope and y-intercept from an equation. So we're given an equation, y equals 2x plus 4. And we want to know what is the slope of that line. Well, we know that the slope is the one that's attached to its x, right? So it's a slippery slope to get hung up on your x. So the one that's attached to the x in this case is 2. So the slope is 2. The y-intercept is the lonely one. Why am I alone? Well, the lonely one is 4. So my y-intercept is 4. So that's how I pick out the slope and y-intercept given an equation. Let's look at another example. We have y equals negative 3/2 x minus 3. Well, same thing. It's a slippery slope to get hung up on your x. So the slope is the one that's attached to the x, which is negative 3/2. So that's my slope. And my y-intercept is the lonely one. Well, the lonely one in this case is negative 3. So b is negative 3. So that's how I find the slope and y-intercept from an equation. Now, how do I graph a linear function? Well, first thing I need to do is pick out my slope and my y-intercept. Well, in this case, my slope is negative 1/2 because that's attached to the x. Now, my y-intercept, notice there's nothing here. There's no lonely people. So how do I say none in math terms? Well, that's 0. So my y-intercept is 0. So now when I graph this, the first step is I plot the y-intercept. Well, my y-intercept is 0. So I'm going to go along my y-axis and find 0, which is right here. And I plot my point. The next step is I'm going to use the slope to plot my second point. Remember, this is change in y over change in x, or you might have heard it in the past as rise over run. We're going to talk about it as change in y over change in x. So my change in y is negative 1. So I go down 1. And my change in x is 2, so I'm going to go to the right, 1, 2, and plot my point. So now I have my first 2 points. The next step is just to connect the dots and draw a line between them. So I'm going to connect the dots, and now I have a linear function that is graphed that goes through 0 and has a slope of negative 1/2. Now, what if I'm given 2 points and asked to find the slope? Well, first thing we need to remember is that coordinates are written in the form x and y, right? So the x goes first and the y goes second. And that slope is the change in the y over the change in the x. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these points and we're going to subtract the y values and put that as my numerator, and subtract the x values and put that as my denominator. So when I do that, I get 1 minus 2. Those are my y's, so that's my change in y. So my change in y is 1 minus 2. And my change in x is 2 minus 4. So that's change in y over change in x. Now when I do that, 1 minus 2 is negative 1. And 2 minus 4 is negative 2. And when I do that, a negative divided by a negative just becomes a positive. So this is just 1/2. So my slope for that line that goes through those 2 points is 1/2. Let's look at another example. So what is the slope of the line that passes through negative 3, and 2, -6? Again, coordinates are written as x and y. So this is my x, this is my y, this is my x, this is my y. And slope is change in y over change in x. So I'm going to calculate that by subtracting my y values first. So negative 3 minus negative 6. And then I'm going to subtract my x values, which is negative 3 minus 2. So I get negative 3 minus negative 6 and negative 3 minus 2. And when I simplify, this really becomes plus positive. So negative 3 plus 6 is 3. And negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5. So it's 3 over negative 5, which is just negative 3/5. There's a video here also that shows you how to graph linear functions in Desmos. So you can go ahead and watch that. Let's talk now about how to check our work with linear equations using Desmos. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to desmos.com, just like this, and we're going to click on the link that says Graphing Calculator. And over here on the left side, we can enter the equation of any linear equation and it will graph it for us. So let's try y equals 2x minus 4. Well, as we can see, it graphs it for us. We can check that against whatever we did on our assignment now. And you can do it this way. Let's say we had an equation though that wasn't in slope-intercept form. We can still graph that on here and check our work. So let's say it was 4x minus 2y is equal to 8. And we can see that that's actually the same as this one. But we can look at this and check our work this way as well. It still graphed the equation in slope-intercept form, even though the equation we put in is not in slope-intercept form. So this is one way that you can check your work using Desmos to find linear equations. Let's talk now about how to sign in to Desmos to complete your work. So what we're going to do is you're going to click on the link to go to the assignment, and it should take you to a page that looks kind of like this. And right here where it says sign in with Google, we're going to click there. And it's going to pop up with our email accounts. You're going to click on your school email account, and it should already have you logged in because you should have already been logged in using Google Classroom. From there, I'm just going to click start the activity, and it will take me into the assignment and allow me to begin. So that's how you will log in to Desmos using Google. Let's take a look now at the Linear Functions Marbleslides Activity. The assignment begins with the learning goals and success criteria. If we scroll down, there's a link here to take us to the Desmos activity. Go ahead and click on that link, and it should take us to a page that looks like this. We're going to go ahead and click Start the Activity. The activity also begins with the learning goals and success criteria. We'll go ahead and click Next. And for the first one, we're just going to see how this works. Our goal is to collect all the stars. So we're going to change the slope and y-intercept of the different lines so that we can collect the stars. Now for the first one, it says just hit launch. So we're going to go ahead and click launch. And notice we get all the stars. It says success. That's our ultimate goal. We're going to go ahead and click next. There's a video here that shows you how to reset. So if you make some changes to the equations and it doesn't work out, you can always hit reset and it'll take you back to where you started. So let's look at the first one. The first one says change one number in the row below to fix the marble slide. Well, we have a line here, and it does look like the slope kind of matches this. So I don't think it's the slope we need to change, maybe just the y-intercept. And we need to change it and bring it down a little bit, so maybe let's try 0. Well, that's not far enough, so let's try -1. Still not far enough, -2. That looks like it might pick up the stars, so we're going to go ahead and click launch. And notice we picked up all the stars, it says success, so we'll move on to the next one. And we'll continue to change the numbers until we get where we want to be. So we'll continue to answer these questions until we get to the end of the activity. Once we get to the end of the activity, we'll go back to our Google form and click next. This will take you to your before you go. Go ahead and fill out your before you go and then submit your work on Google Classroom.